if you want to make sure that you're not making this mistake that gets a lot of people to not have listeners. And honestly, it's very tough to get listeners. Maybe 10-ish% of podcasts are starting to get 300 or more downloads per episode. So it's going to take some time and effort in order to be able to get in front of the right person. So Tracy has this idea for you today that is, make it all about your listener. So today I want to make this all about you because you're listening, you're checking this out, and I want you to have the value. And you should be doing that for your listener as well. And she gave us a formula of how to do that. Call them out. Number one, be the guide and tell them what you can do to help them. And then the third is, what can they expect as an outcome? What is going to benefit them? And
it's okay.
Go ahead,
I just want to say this. Yeah. It's okay if you're not the expert in something. You don't have to be a guide that's an expert. When I started my very first podcast on 3D printing, I was not an expert in 3D printing. In fact, I really rarely ran the machine. My partner did. But I was curious. So it's okay as long as you're steps ahead. Your curiosity and your deep interest in something can be the reason they're joining you along for the ride. So it's okay to not be an expert in something and be a host of a show. I just want to be really clear with that. Your enthusiasm is just as valuable.
Yeah. And you have a lot of it. I started a real estate show when I had only done a handful of real estate transactions. I started real estate investing in 2005. And by 2016, I had only done a handful, 5 or 6 different things, like random things. And I launched a show called Creative Real Estate Podcast. And when launching that show, I definitely did not feel like the expert. I knew more than a lot of people, but I did not know more than most of the experts. Most of the people that were teaching it, I was still learning from them. And I would bring them on my show and I would have the enthusiasm, just like you're talking about. Bring them on the show, I'd ask the questions. So try to add the value, all about them. This is our first idea today, all about the listener. I'd try to add value. I'd try to be there for the ride. And I think some of the key things for me in that moment was to make sure that I was being as authentic as possible. Meaning, if I hadn't done something, I didn't want to speak from experience. I want to say that I heard it. If I was interviewing somebody and they had barely taught me something, I wouldn't want to act like I knew it already. I would want to go ahead and say, wow, it's interesting. I'm going to look that up. So that you want to be authentic for sure in all things, especially when you have a podcast. And if you're not the guide or the hero or the expert really. And if you are playing that role of the expert, when you don't know something, Tracy, let's go there. If you basically are the best at something or really, really good at something or have a lot to say, more than most people in your genre, and you end up not knowing something, how should you act about that?
So look, we're all learning. There's always a stage of learning, and it is a better place to come from a state of curiosity than it is to come from a state of expertise. It always is that way. If you ask better questions, you're going to get better answers. And it's always the way, no matter what stage we're in. So I think that that's my approach always, no matter what show I am in, I always have something new to learn. And because of that, I might be 10 steps ahead of my current listener because I'm farther ahead in my journey than they are. But if I'm closer to where they are, they're looking for us to ask the right question that they need. And that's our opportunity. Our opportunity is to make sure we're asking it at the right levels for the audience we have. So if we are truly an expert and we have lots of experts following us, then we have to ask those expert questions, and we can't let it go and assume that everyone does know. That's where we run into trouble. So even if we think we know, clarify. And that's always a great way to do it, is to say, hey, I've heard this. This is the way that I've always tried this, but what's your approach? Now you're getting a broader view on something. That is helpful. And it also, you might learn something, and you could say, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way. I'm going to have to try that and let you know how it goes.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I get advice on my show. Like, I had Dave Jackson on my show. Dave Jackson is like an OG of podcasting. And I completely disagreed with him on something. Like, I was like, Dave, I'm going to try this because you're really an expert and I respect you. but I don't think it's going to work for me. That's an okay place to be as well. So you can always do that in your post follow-up. You can always do it on a future episode and say, I took this advice and I really tried it, but I've had trouble applying it. It just really didn't work. And here's why I think it's not the approach to take. Yeah. So you can have a disagreement like that with somebody who's in your industry because you're at the same level, but you got to explain yourself. And you also have to give them the respect and benefit of the doubt for where they are.